Hello and welcome to this webinar on going global in the e-commerce era from the team here at Raconteur in London and sponsored by PayU. If you run an e-commerce operation and you're thinking of going global, or maybe you've started on that journey and you want to accelerate while keeping complexity under control, then the next 50 minutes are for you. My name is Gren Manuel and I'm going to be moderating a fast-paced, in-depth discussion with two real experts, both of whom run truly global businesses. What are we going to be discussing? So we're going to be discussing things like the challenge of payments, instant credit, GDPR and privacy issues on a global scale. We're going to be talking about security, things like the PCI DSS standard, which governs the storage and transmission of card data, and that needs to concern you even if you've outsourced all of your processing operations. And also, inevitably, we talk about Bitcoin and whether offering Bitcoin can make a difference to basket abandonment. And our discussion is going to focus on high growth markets, places like India, Brazil, Turkey, Russia, places that are high growth today, but even more so tomorrow. So, who are our experts? So we have Floriana Gramlich. She is Global Head of Product Payment Solutions at OLX Group, the global online classifieds business. So they operate the #1 classifieds business in India, also Brazil, Pakistan, Poland, Portugal. I think that's about 1.5 billion people right there. In fact, they operate in more than 40 countries. Floriana was previously with Twitter and PayPal. And we also have Matthias Setzer. He is Chief Commercial Officer of PayU, a fintech that provides localized payment services in about 17 high-growth countries. Again, places like Brazil, India, Russia, Turkey. Their footprint adds up to about 2.3 billion people. They work with brands like Adidas, Sony, Netflix, AliExpress, providing localized payment solutions, frictionless checkout, reducing basket abandonment, just helping ease the complexities sometimes caused by national payment regulations. Before joining PayU in 2016, Matthias spent more than a decade at PayPal. So I begin by asking Florian a fundamental question. Suppose I'm running an e-commerce operation in the Netherlands or Germany. I'm doing pretty well, and I've decided that I'm going to go for growth and I'm going to go for global markets. Why don't I just go to the United States? It's a 500 billion market. Logistics is easy. Everything's very straightforward. Credit cards are widely accepted. Why should I tangle with places such as India, Brazil, or Russia?
The founder, or the co-founder of OLX and also of Letgo, a site now in the US, he's Alex Oxenford, and he used a term which is called the Martian Approach. So basically, if you would be an unbiased alien and you're looking down at the earth and you don't know anything, where would you actually found a business? Would you find the business like very closest where you are, or where the biggest opportunity lies? Yeah, and the answer is quite clear. You go where the biggest opportunity is without your bias. And that is, for example, why OLX is more or less not focusing on the European markets, so I call them the easy markets, but more or less where the markets are growing insanely fast. India, Indonesia, Latin America, and so on and so forth. And there's a super big opportunity for us.
Give you one example, building on that, what you just said, Florian, take India. And I would not necessarily recommend to go to India first if you have a well-run business in the Netherlands and look to internationalize. It is a challenging market. But India is in the process of the next couple of years, 5 years, 6 years, bringing online another 500 million people. Right, so there's basically an entire Europe, like bigger European Union, going online in the next 5 years in India. So if that's not a massive opportunity, where is it? There's other examples across Latin America, even Africa, and then also Eastern Europe, where you have very, very high growth rates. It doesn't rule out that you are successfully going into the more mature markets. Of course, that's a consideration. You shouldn't rule it out. But if you're looking for real growth opportunities, you should consider those growth markets.
But I mean, let's take for granted that a vendor has got either a digital product or they've got a physical product and they have logistics sorted out. What are the other barriers to creating a genuine global e-commerce site?
I would say there's, and this is obviously a biased opinion as I'm working for a payments company, but the other side of the stream is there is the logistics stream and then there's the payment stream, right? This is a very fundamental requirement. Without the payments, a visitor actually stays a visitor. It only becomes a customer when there is a payment facilitated and completed successfully, right? And payment habits are vastly different around the planet. So there's a lot of things to consider. So I would say this is an important one. And then there is a whole lot of topics, including languages and support and other things that you should consider. I would also refer to Floriane because, again, she is running such a business and has a couple of insights there, I guess.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
you're playing payments, Floriane. How important is it?
It's super important because ultimately, without payments, we don't make any money. And ultimately, I love to do things, but ultimately, we also need the revenues to actually be happy. No, and actually just copy to that. Especially in the emerging markets, payments are complicated. It's not like in Europe, you can happily go along, and many of the countries, Germany not, or Italy also not, with credit cards or with cards in general. In the markets that OLX, for example, operates, you cannot get along with cards only. We are talking about alternative payment methods. We are talking about countries that are largely underbanked or where they are just paying with mobile phones. So basically, it's really, this is a huge challenge to actually enable users to actually pay. Again, cards are easy. And that's a huge barrier. Finding partners which are actually easily scalable. PayU is actually one of them. And we are working with PayU in many of our countries simply because just going out with cards it's not possible. We need to look in Argentina. There's cash payments. We're looking at India. There's net banking.
Or UPI, yeah.
Or UPI, yes.
And it's kind of interesting, right? When you started your answer, you said like it's kind of easy in Europe. I can get along with cards, and then you started taking out market after market because actually even in Europe, cards don't cut it, right? You said Germany. German card penetration is 7-8%, right? Netherlands, all ideal, right? Scandinavia have local schemes, France has local schemes, right? Take Poland, where we have a strong abundance of actually card usage in store. It's one of the world's biggest contactless NFC markets. So the Polish population is used to plastic, but online, 75% of payments are bank payments, similar to the Indian net banking, actually, right? In Latin America, you said that we have about 30 cash payment methods in the portfolio in 7 markets, and there is one coming every other month, right? So there is a huge number of different payment methods out there, and markets like India, Visa and MasterCard have maybe 1.5, maybe 2% penetration. So you're losing out 98% of the market if you go for the classic card answer.
Yeah, I was doing some research a couple of weeks ago about e-commerce in Brazil, and I was stunned at some of the ingenious solutions that are available in the open in the local market for the unbanked. Maybe, Matthias, maybe you could explain some of them. I mean, some of them are, to somebody who's used to conventional credit card payments, some of these things are, they're very important for the market.
Make no sense, right?
No, I didn't say they make no sense. I would describe them as ingenious solutions to a very specific local problem. Could you maybe go through this thing that they have called Boleta?
Happy to, and that's a very prominent example. And we have, if you go across the Latin American markets, you will find various variations of the Boleto Bancado type payment. Basically, Boleto means invoice. And what you do, as an explanation to our audience, when you go online, you buy something, put it in the shopping basket, and then go to payments and choose to pay with a Boleto, then you get a QR code presented. And that QR code, which in the more advanced version is a mobile version on your smartphone, Brazilians love smartphones, you then go to the next kiosk, supermarket, little newsstand, and actually pay against this QR code. They scan it, right? And then you pay in cash. And this is one of the fascinating things in a market like Brazil. It has a huge credit card penetration in terms of it has some of the largest credit card acquirers on the planet. And it has a massive usage of credit, and it's the second largest credit pool on the planet in terms of revenue. So Matthias, you're telling me that there's a big card market, one of the biggest on the planet. Yes, there is. But half of the Brazilian population doesn't even have a bank account. And there is a bit of a distrust against banks and institutions, and so they prefer actually to do cash payments, even if they would have other alternatives. Half of them don't have a bank account, not even speaking a card, or they don't like it. And so they're using cash payments like Boleto. As a merchant, You have to, if you really want to be successful in Brazil, of course you have to include Boleto, and that means you have to adjust your logistics process, your payment flow, and wait for the cash payment to be settled, for example. Companies like ours take a lot of the pain and will help you doing that, but you're right, this is a local ingenious solution. It's doable, it's manageable, but you need to learn about it and implement it. Otherwise, you're missing out in the case of Brazil between 30 and 40% of your conversion.
Or is this because of people don't have the payment means, or is it just a question of custom?
Both, actually. There's an element of like half of the Brazilian population does not have a bank account / doesn't want it. There is a bit of both, right? In terms of they are deliberately not using it and they can't use it. So in Brazil, I would say this is a mixture of the two. But it's also a habit, and those local payment habits, speaking of net banking in India, speaking of pay by links online in Poland, speaking of many cash payment methods across Latin America, speaking of loyalty card payments in Turkey, they're super habituated, yes, and they just want it. And if you're a merchant, I think the one standard recommendation, the one very fundamental recommendation here is you should follow your consumers' needs. Right, this is a consumer preference, and I think from that angle, cash payments in Brazil are also a consumer preference, very strong, and you should cater for that. Sorry, Florian, you were going to say something.
Yeah, actually, it also depends a little bit on your customer segment. Like when we're looking for India or Pakistan or Latin America, we also have a lot of business customers, and these business customers, they tend to pay also with cash, bank transfer, check, and sometimes even payment methods I don't want to even talk about. So
you can hardly pronounce them, yeah.
That also, but there's also really some strange stuff going on, and these create a huge amount of operational burden on a business because they want to pay with that because they don't have a suitable alternative. When they look, for example, to Brazil, installments then again can be an alternative for paying with that, or invoicing. So which also then increases the operational complexity on a business. That's something we are struggling quite a bit as OLX in these markets. So the better we are and actually following these customer needs of these customer segments, the better it is.
Totally, and I think this is one. Go ahead, sorry, Green.
Sorry, and I mean, linked to this is the question of credit, right? I mean, there are some markets where people are expecting some kind of instant credit, even for relatively small purchases.
This is, again, a little bit of a habituation, right? If I'm starting at this side, we mentioned Turkey or we mentioned Brazil. It's totally habituated and normal to pay installments, even for small ticket items, right? So you would actually almost pay your lunch with 3 to 6 installments. Why not, if you can? And the Turkish customer, if I'm taking it to the extreme, they would pay half of the lunch with installments and half with loyalty points, right, out of several loyalty schemes. And this is totally normal. Nobody would raise an eyebrow in Turkey about that. And in Brazil, it's also very common. It's actually, when you go on a Brazilian website, it's actually that you do it in one payment is the exception. It's almost like you have to work your way through to the one singular sale payment. It's so normal that you pay in installments. And this is a habituation. This is a cultural habit. This is a local preference, right, by all means. There is also the other side of it. And that's one reason why, for example, we're offering buy now, pay later solutions that we built ourselves in markets like Colombia, Tifia, or in India, LazyPay, or with associate companies like PaySense or Zest, right, where we offer credit solutions. We offer partners that do it. We have every card payment credit that is on the planet. Because consumers also want to optimize their spending and sometimes need to go over a cash flow hurdle or sometimes need to balance different expenditures. And so we help them with the appropriate and responsible amount of credit. So that is also true. It increases spending power.
And I mean, of course, with any form of credit system, if I'm sitting in the Netherlands, say, and I want to kind of get paid now. And also I also want to be a responsible vendor. I don't want people at the other side of the world to get into debt buying my products.
No, of course not. And that's why companies like us, you would actually integrate with one interface to a company like PayU, and I would ask Floriane to comment on that. She has real life experience. And that gives you access to loyalty and installment-based payment credit forms in Turkey. That gives you the access to Colombia, that gives you the access to India, that gives you the access to Brazil, including buy now, pay later, and all variations of installments, right? So for you as a merchant, companies like us, merchant processors, PSPs, make it simple by giving you one access layer. And in terms of the overspend, yes, it's our responsibility and that of our partner banks to make sure that people don't overspend. The good news is those amounts are typically relatively small, and we're talking individual purchases, and we're also monitoring it for a number of reasons, including risk, but also the responsibility of it. So that's not a big problem to monitor that. And so we can assume that all those payments are made in a very responsible way. But yeah, you have one API, you get all those things sorted, and you actually are able to offer your consumers and or your small businesses, to Floriana's point, a credit solution.
And that's actually quite important. So when OLX is not a young company anymore, OLX is now over, I believe, almost 12 years old. And when we started, like every country did their own payments, which works, but it's not scalable. And right now we are doing payments globally to all of our countries because it works. Payments are scalable, and basically what we are looking for are partners that are actually operating in all these different countries. And like when I work with PayU, I can cover like 70% of the markets we are operating in. And it's actually not that easy because there are many payment service providers out there, but many concentrated, again, coming back to the point, on credit card or card payments, and then the whole optimization around authorization rates and all that stuff. Tons of them in the US to have an example. But here, for us, it's important to have an easy integration, to have a good API, which covers all the different use cases, which also allow us for ideally kind of own most of the user interface, because we want to optimize that. And that is a big part of our selection criteria in order for working with the payment service provider. And PayU actually can do that for us.
And let me add some numbers on that, right? If I may, just very briefly, I'm not disclosing the exact ones, but you would argue, and you probably from an outside point of view, like Florian said, most PSPs deliver mostly card payments. I can absolutely confirm that the majority of payments for PayU is actually alternative forms of payments. And that is including, we are fully licensed acquirer and principal member of Visa and MasterCard in European Economic Area. So we do process card payments in 27 countries there, 27 plus one, right? And from that angle, obviously, we know everything about cards. We're big in Turkey and other markets. We do card payments all across Brazil and others, but still the majority of payments in our universe and with our portfolio is alternative payment methods, which actually in those markets are not the alternatives. They're actually the main means of payments. Right. Sorry, Green, I just want to shed some light on numbers.
Okay, just one thing I want to say before we keep this going. I see some people are putting questions in on the comments box. We will have time at the end, maybe 10 or 15 minutes for comments. So if you have comments, questions, things you want clarifying, just make sure you put them in that box. We'll get to it in a moment. Maybe we'll keep Florian and Matthias talking for maybe another 15 minutes before we get to it. There's just one thing I was going to ask you, Florian. We were talking about, overpayment. Do you have any idea what's the most expensive thing anybody has ever bought on your platform?
We have many platforms. We don't have just one. We also have a platform which is called Chat in UAE. And it's interesting enough, it's second-hand designer stuff. And
that sounds expensive.
It has quite a high average selling product price for a classifieds product. So which is, I'm not sure if I can disclose that, but it's high. And also kind of something that is, again, looking at the Middle Eastern region. When you go there, there are a lot of very, very expensive cars. It's interesting. But not the cars or the status symbol anymore. It's the license plate. So if you have like really, really short and crisp and like very unique license plates, it means you're important. So we had quite a few with quite high prices on the platforms, especially in MENA.
License plates.
Yeah, that's a Christmas gift idea for anybody looking for a Christmas gift. Get somebody a personalized license plate from the UAE, from Florian's platform. Now,
exactly. And the used Bentley comes on top, right? Wonderful.
Yeah. So we have managed 20 minutes without talking about GDPR and privacy issues, which I think is probably a record. Let's talk about this. Obviously, if you're dealing outside of Europe, obviously GDPR is not an issue. But what are the issues?
I would actually object that with all due respect, because GDPR is an issue and is a opportunity in a number of geographies. And let's take again Brazil, and Brazil is one of the obviously most interesting markets, one of the world's largest economies, and 220 million people. And actually, Brazil has just introduced legislation, and they expresses verbis refer to GDPR. Right, and so the data protection rules coming up in Latin America's largest economy will be governed, or actually a one-on-one copy of GDPR. You're seeing very similar trends, not exactly, they don't call it GDPR, but you're seeing similar discussions, for example, in India. So I would argue that GDPR and GDPR type rules, as are open banking and PSD2 type rules or marketplace regulations, are, for good and bad, a global trend, actually. I would say they go way beyond Europe.
I can only copy that, actually, and also when data is actually flowing through Europe in any sense, you also need to take care of GDPR. And frankly, it's also kind of a responsibility to the customers, right? We want to have our data secure. We want to have also cardholder data, for example, secure. There are also stuff like PCI DSS comes into play. By the way, something completely or often underappreciated by people who are getting into the payment space to start with, because there's this myth out there, you don't need to take care of PCI DSS when you start transacting as a merchant.
Quite the opposite.
Sure, yeah, the PSP takes some responsibility away from that, but ultimately you as a merchant, you're responsible and also kind of having the right, getting the certificates and really seeing if everything is in order. And it has been, I believe, quite a costly endeavor for quite some merchants already who didn't regard PCI as an important thing.
And let me add to that, right? I mean, this is maybe the other one, but we should go back to privacy and data issues then, but it is a part of it. So if you think PCI DSS, and obviously companies like PayU, we are fully certified, and to Floriana's point, take care of that, because we have to, we want to, it's the right thing to do anyway, independent of the geography you operate in. But PCI DSS is by no means sufficient for a very protected and safe environment. So our security architecture goes significantly beyond the standards of a PCI DSS. Some of the large brands you were mentioning at the beginning and other merchants, including OLX, make us also very compliant and make us invest in technology. It's not a coincidence. We made a recent acquisition of with an Israeli high-tech startup, which has one of the safest and most secure environments we've ever seen. Right, on that one, it's almost it's like built around security, right? And that's the right way to do, because to your point, we're dealing with money, we're dealing with privacy and data issues. So just building what Floriana said, PCI DSS is at the core, but it goes way beyond, and it is something to do. I don't think it's specific from what you have to do in a mature market anyway, but make no mistake, security standards in the growth markets are basically as high as you are used to it back home.
But generally, I mean, if I'm, say, like we said at the beginning, hypothetically, I'm running an e-commerce operation in the Netherlands. If I'm doing European best practice, am I fine, or are there like individual wrinkles?
From a security data point of view, you are pretty much fine as the first one, and you can go into numbers, geographies. Why is Matthias caveating it? There are data privacy regulations. If you fancy going to India, there is no regulation. You need to have local data. Now, with a company like ours, we are completely localized, local service, local metal on the ground, local data flows and everything. We will help you with a lot of localization of the payments piece. There's other regulations for Turkey, for example, or for Russia, where again, local data is needed. You can have your copies there. So a European standard best practice is a very good basis. There are still some things where you should talk to a local partner and find out what the peculiarities are. Other geographies, you can go happily with a European standard. You're very well set up for it. Floriane, your experience?
Yeah, usually.
Am I saying the truth?
Yeah, no, it's usually the same. It's European standards are quite high. In some of the countries we are also operating in Ukraine, for example. Ukraine is very local, same as Russia. It's sometimes not, you have quite a few PSPs out there. Most of them we would never use, because also in our selection criteria, we're going way beyond and kind of looking at certificates, but also we really honor the security of our customers. And like many of the PSPs, they are difficult but it's because we're looking at it from, I believe, a little bit also from a European lens, and that privacy, data privacy, and all that stuff is important to us.
Okay, so there's two more issues that I want to talk about briefly, and they're both everybody's most hated subjects. The first most hated subject is tax. I mean, particularly if you're just starting off. I mean, is this a sort of an issue you can ignore until you get to a decent sort of size?
If you want to end up in jail, then yes, sure. Or want to get your CFO or board into jail, yes.
But in most cases, is the tax not the responsibility of the purchaser? Because I know that in some countries, for instance, in China, they've just changed the laws there. When stuff is imported, it's the recipient's responsibility for paying value-added tax and customs and consumption tax and things like that. I mean, from my end, if I'm just starting off, can I just ignore it until I reach a certain scale, or is this something I've got to build in? Is this something I'm going to have to deal with right from the very beginning?
I might give you two very practical examples. One is India and the other one is Argentina. In Argentina, you're required to have a local business in Argentina in order to make business. Argentina is a country where we have a lot of inflation, but we also have quite high regulation. So basically, you as a merchant, you're required to have a connection to the local tax authority, and if that purchase goes above a certain threshold, you need to ping this tax authority. You get something back which you need to print on the invoice, which is then also a requirement. And that requires you as a merchant to actually apply for this certificate upfront. It costs also a little bit of money, and that's your responsibility of a merchant. That also the payment service provider cannot help you much with. Same as with India. India, depending on which regions something is being bought, then you have a combination of two different tax systems, which you as a merchant also need to apply. So there's a certain amount of stuff in the responsibility of merchants that is not to underappreciate, of course.
Yeah, and in Argentina, that also applies to digital products, I believe, isn't that right?
It does. Yeah, it does.
So I mean, you just be selling you could be selling web hosting or some other digital product, and you have to start engaging with the tax authorities in Argentina if you have customers there.
Yes.
Totally. And I would argue to Floriana's point, she pointed out rightly so and very correctly that those are also merchant responsibilities. And to your previous question, Gren, it makes no sense to ignore taxation because it will really get you into trouble. Countries, also in the growth markets, are way too advanced to ignore that. To Floriana's point, yes, this is a merchant responsibility, but at least payment companies like us have the right payment flows for markets like Argentina so that you can properly collect your tax and properly manage those things in a way that are diligent and useful. So the infrastructure is there. You shouldn't ignore it. Maybe Argentina shouldn't be your first market when you internationalize as a local Dutch business in your case. But at the same time, it is a nice, thriving economy. Yes, the inflation topic is there, but we have a number of big brands that do successful business there for many years. So it is quite possible. Maybe it's a second wave of internationalization from that point of view. So there are easier markets where you could go first and grow fast.
Okay, and the other subject, which is highly unpopular, I know, is returns. There was a very interesting article on the BBC website yesterday about hyper returners. So these are people who buy 15 wedding dresses and return 14 of them, or maybe even they take a photograph of themselves and return all 15. But I mean, clearly, this is really complicated. If you've got to start returning money. I mean, if suppose somebody used that Boleta system in Brazil where they've made a cash payment and they've gone to a kiosk, how do you even do a return?
Yeah, guess what? You talk to a company like PayU, and then we will tell you that we actually have an API for that. We have a process that allows you to also then issue the sort of reverse boleto, if you want to call it that way. I'm not saying it's easy, right? And let's listen to Floriana because she's doing that. Returns are never fun, but the answer is the same answer as before. It's quite important and useful and beneficial to talk to a decent payment company and local partner that can help you with that, because there are solutions. It's not undoable, and it has been so often. Also in the case of Boleto for Brazil, we have solutions for that. But Floriana, how good are those solutions and how cumbersome is it?
It's still not the easiest
It's a challenge,
topic. Yeah, it's still one. So sometimes you have payment methods that you simply cannot easily refund to. That's when companies also come up with like some digital wallet systems, for example, where it's added basically to work with the financial institution or with the provider who has actually kind of can provide real wallets instead of having revamp that so that the hard way also offering coins and credits just also for the reason of refunds. To be frank. Another aspect here to consider is you as a merchant, you can also kind of influence behavior of your customers quite a bit. So if you're finding out, okay, these are the preferred payment methods of your customers, then sometimes also in your selection criteria, stuff like, okay, I can actually refund to a certain payment method should be part of the selection criteria of what to offer. Then driving to drive customers into these payment methods easier to operationally handle. Again, that's coming back to how much variety the PSP is actually able.
Not every payment method makes sense for every country and every merchant, right? We have close to 400 payment methods for our 17 plus markets. And you shouldn't choose them all, typically saying, right? And someone like Floriani or everybody else managing the payments for a merchant of any size, don't just take them all, right? To Floriani's point, and especially to the question of returns, some have a higher propensity for returns than others, some are easier to handle than others. Again, especially if you're starting with internationalization, maybe take a more doable market, get into those growth rates and opportunities, and also choose some of the easier payment methods to start with. Right. At the same time, it's doable. It has been solved before, and including what Floriani said, they're operating a very complicated classifieds marketplace from that end with a C2C and other models, right? And also OLX facilitates returns, right?
Yeah, we do at least refunds and sometimes it's here also. What also comes into our consideration, if you, for example, have a return, then it also means you have a refund. A refund, depending on how you're being set up, also costs money. So it's all needs to be part of the business case, actually, and how to handle that. Ultimately, it's a business case in some sort. What you allow, what you restrict, and basically what payment methods to use for specific purchase types.
Okay, now in a moment, I'm going to ask you for a couple of top tips. But before that, I wanted to go to some questions which we've had from some of the people who are watching. Okay, and I think this was pretty inevitable that we get asked this question. So let's do it now. Somebody's asked, what about Bitcoin?
Of course, solves it all. Let's just do all Bitcoins. Now, the simple answer, Bitcoins are an interesting topic, right? And as our group has actually invested in Bitcoin exchange in Bitcoin funds and in a crypto exchange, I should correctly say, because there's many different things beyond Bitcoins. I would say for it's too early for mass applications. Also, there are governance problems in terms of mass application, in terms of the high degree of anonymity, which is also so beautiful about Bitcoins. It's also maybe its biggest obstacle for a number of markets and regulations. Also, the other side of it, to be very blunt, just because you're settling in Bitcoins does not take away a tax requirement. Taxes are taxes, right? Or data protection is data protection. You still have to obey to the same law. Just because you have a more anonymous means of payments, and maybe Bitcoin is a currency, maybe Bitcoin is an asset class, maybe Bitcoin is a technology, that alone is a good discussion we could have, does not take away those responsibilities. Are we actively engaged in this area? Have we even invested? Are we looking into more solutions? Yes, absolutely. And it may be 2019, 2020, we see a few more solutions around that. And happy to talk to Floriani about it. But at the same time, some of the underlying challenges remain. It's not being solved by Bitcoin as such. Floriani, what's your take?
I think I cannot agree more. I'm out of personal interest, really, also personal interest. I'm highly interested in it, right? But from a business perspective, not yet. Not for our markets. I think we have quite bigger fish to fry, to be honest. Kind of when I look at India, I'm not so concerned about Bitcoin. I'm concerned about finding really the right growth payment methods, because everything that is happening in India kicks off so fast and goes so fast suddenly. So it's more kind of finding here the right mix before jumping to Bitcoin, which is hip. I completely agree, but not the right thing for our customers just yet.
I mean, are there any markets where there'd be a marginal improvement in sort of basket abandonment if you offered Bitcoin, or is it just it's just not relevant at the moment?
No, it's too far away from mass applications. And this is the trouble. Bitcoins are fascinating technology, or cryptocurrencies, I should say, right? There is Ripple with its currency, Ethereum, there's a few others, right? We would anyway only offer a mix of those ultimately. So let the consumer choose. But basket abandonment is lowered by offering more consumer choice. Now, you could argue that there is probably a very small, there's some consumers who would prefer with Bitcoins, but I would guess they are in the sub-promille range. Bitcoin is still a very niche thing in the grand scheme of things. Take global payment flows, Bitcoins can hardly be measured in terms of share, right? In the billions, hundreds of billions of trading volume, but not payment volume, right? Because they're actually more of an asset class than a currency, right? Asset class in the sense of investment. People speculate with it more than anything else. And even in that sense, they are only a tiny fraction of global currency speculation and global currency trading, if you want. Right, and from that angle, they're way too small for actually reducing your basket size abandonment in any material way. Can they get there? Can some cryptocurrency get there? Potentially. One reason why we as an investor put in some money in those companies and keep watching and observing. It's a very interesting technology. Can it help on the settlement side and the backend side? So can we think about a general ledger crypto infrastructure that allows a company like us to settle more efficiently with a merchant like OLX? Yeah, sure. But that's sort of technologies that are coming in the next few years. Does it help on the basket size next year? No.
And that's actually quite an interesting thing to say, like the settlement, because you forgot a little bit to talk about it.
I thought about it.
No, because settlement, for example, is a super important topic for companies like us. We sometimes have a central setup to the Netherlands. Many countries are locally set up. So we obviously want to settle locally in these countries, but sometimes it's not possible. And then sometimes you're collecting centrally, then again, settling locally, that all costs money, right? In terms of transaction fees and everything. So it's also something to have quite a good view on how to optimize that. And if, for example, Bitcoin at some point can help with that. Mm. I'm here.
Okay, so we've got a question from Chatterberg. Thank you very much for that. He is asking about another complicated, difficult issue. He's wanting to know on your issues on cybersecurity issues and India payments digitally. As you know, there's a lot of confusion about the central identification system.
Totally. Let's have another webinar on that. Or two.
We could do an hour on that, but we can't do it for an hour. So just briefly, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Thanks for the question.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe I go first, Floriane. I think there is. I mean, obviously, there's two sides to that, right? I mean, I think there is, on the one hand side, the Indian government is currently and has been for a little while tightening the grip in terms of privacy and security measures. It also has come up with a actually pretty good infrastructure originally around the India stack and the Aadhaar and the digital fingerprint. It's an impressive success story, and the design is done in a way that you cannot easily backtrack where it has been used, right? At the same time, yes, it causes concerns because it's a very central structure and it's a government database, and what is it really used for, and can it be hacked, and what happens if it would be hacked? Because any infrastructure ultimately has a risk of being hacked, albeit low, but there is. So this is an open discussion, right? And we will have more discussions like that. Take the discussion between, let me go in a different direction, take Android handsets versus Apple handsets, right? Apple stores locally in a secure element. Android is a bit more open. Android is an open source infrastructure. I can actually see what it's doing. Apple is very closed. I can't see what it's doing. So which one is safer from an architectural point of view? Bob, that's it, right? I mean, this is a very, very deep question and a longer discussion. I think in the case of India, companies like ours keep investing into security, into encryption, and into advanced technologies, for example, around tokenization. The technology we bought in Israel is very soon going live with a very large merchant in India. Right, so we will deploy the technologies there, and there is advanced tokenization behind, which is a high level of security on the encryption piece, but not the ultimate answer yet, right? So we have to watch, we have to invest, and keep it safe. Floriane, what's your take?
Yeah, that's one thing, kind of keeping the data in the system secure, and the other thing, what is if something happened? So you have a wallet that has been hacked and then applied to purchase, for example, something on the site. What merchants do more and more is more or less also investing in their own security and this systems. So basically, we have a fraud detection system, which is quite advanced on the site, basically, which is coupled with some other anonymized customer data. So basically, that we identify very, very, very quickly if something is wrong with the student user, and then also trying to act on it accordingly. It's also sometimes partnering with PSPs, depending on how we are set up.
Let me get a very practical trend.
Sorry, it sheds a spotlight on the question of trust, right? Which is people are only going to transact with a site if they trust it.
Yeah.
And trust is a multiple components. And as a vendor, you have control over some of them, but in some cases you're reliant on other. And in the case of India, depending on the payment methods, you're going to be dependent on payment provider, or in some cases, depending on what's going on, effectively the government, which is a sort of supplier of identification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would argue this is a challenge, of course, and I'm not denying that at all. And as we are a very large payment provider in India, with a business we've built organically and one that we have acquired and combined, so we are fairly substantial as a payment provider in this wonderful growth market. Security is a very big concern, is a very big topic, right? And we undertaking significant efforts on the technical process, training, and other aspects on the security side, also working closely with banks, building secure connections, redundant double connections, working with all sorts of elements on that. It doesn't ultimately protect you. There is obviously now even more push for digital payments because of demonetization. There is an element of where digital payments feel like a little more control or more prone to fraud. Let me challenge that from the aspect, if you go back to the good old cash societies, right? How much was a typical pocket fraud, theft fraud? How much was stolen in every little store? On average, 3 to 5%, right? And you paid for it. And if a merchant today has a theft and a fraud rate of 3 to 5%, they may be out of business in e-commerce, right, on that one. So there's also a rationalization argument that would say, yes, there is a electronic means of payments, and electronic commerce maybe allows for some different scale. And there is an element we absolutely closely need to watch, but let's not make the mistake where we're coming from. The good old days had a lot of substantial fraud already baked in, and you were prone to that every day. Right, you just didn't notice or you don't remember anymore. So I think there's also the element of electronic commerce and digital payments, and e-commerce actually is also a lot of safety in there.
Yeah, and from a merchant perspective, we don't. India is for me the most interesting market, and I actually have been in India this year alone like 5 times.
Same here.
It's an important market for us, a very important one. And one is after demonetization, everything is growing so fast, especially in the payments scheme, as you said, Matthias. But we as a merchant, we are not following every trend. So we are also seeing that after everything is growing right now, then after that it will also be some will go away again. Some go much lower than we would have actually anticipated. So we also wait and see a little bit and see what clusters are being developed, and then take it from there. You don't need to jump on every ship directly. It's also a little bit a question of prioritization.
Let your PSP do it, and then talk to them what works.
Yes, yeah. That's actually also good. It's
so
also good.
I think we've probably got time for just one more question. It's quite an interesting one because, of course, this week, if you're watching us live, as you know, this is Cyber Monday week, which if you're in the US, this is your biggest week of the year. But of course, Cyber Monday is not a universal e-shopping festival. And so we've got a question here. It's like, what other countries have got their own? I mean, everybody knows about Singles Day in China, but I mean, is there like a whole range of days in different countries of the year? And if you're trying to be a global vendor, is it worthwhile trying to chase every single individual national e-shopping festival, or is it just too complicated? And also, actually, the other question is there like a diary? Is there anywhere where I can go to find out what
diaries? I have to get the question if you organize it. I would say you mentioned Singles Day, right? And Singles Day is by a mile larger than Cyber Monday and Black Friday combined. So obviously you should watch Singles Day. And we actually have Singles Day activities in markets like Poland. We are working there, for example, with an AliExpress, and this is public because we do marketing with them. And Polish consumers are very happy to have the Singles Days.
Yes.
So absolutely should you consider a Singles Day, and it's spilling over. Like Cyber Monday was originally very US-centric, and so was Black Friday, and actually now everybody knows it in our part of the world and in others. In India, you should do something on Diwali. right? This is, it's not the right comparison. I may get some negative feedback for that, but it's the closest thing to what you know in the Western world is Christmas and holiday. It's a major celebration. It's a very happy one. You should go there. It's wonderful, right? People seeing their families, making gifts and others. So there's big Diwali promotions, for example, happening. Brazil has the national holidays and big festivals, and there's Carnival coming. And can you do funny things around soccer events in Brazil and the Carnival? Yes, of course. Right. I'm not aware of a global dictionary. Maybe there is one. So please let me know. But yes, Cyber Monday. Yes, Black Friday. Yes, Singles Day. Yes, Diwali. Right. So yes, there are local ones, and it's worthwhile doing it because there's substantial volume generated.
Yeah, of course. Valentine's Day as well. Of course, don't forget Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Incentive for marketing. If I would be kind of
hire a good marketeer, and work with a payment company that doesn't drown in the volume, right? We're seeing peaks of up to a factor of 30 on daily volumes for that one, and we had to significantly invest and upgrade our infrastructure. So it's easier said than done, but handling those peaks. But if you're not online, if your payment processor doesn't handle it, you have a big problem. So far, touch wood, has been working, but those promotions can be very substantial. And I'm not talking Cyber Monday and Black Friday. I'm talking the others where we saw massive spikes.
And again, sorry if I might drop in. Like we have a few countries where we sometimes have with other PSPs like availabilities around or below 80%. Yeah, it's local ones, right? It's kind of they don't have that much resources to invest into infrastructure, and infrastructure costs money. So kind of how would you do a Black Friday or Cyber Monday if you don't even have these?
No, you won't, right?
You won't, right? Because you will have.
It can cause big economic touch wood, right? I mean, nobody is perfect. Also, PayU is not perfect, but we are ready for those topics, and we have simply invested, right? It costs millions, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, actually, I can answer part of that, which is that the e-commerce foundation have got a website where they do a lot of country profiles. And as part of the country profiles, they often have a little diary saying what are the big festivals. So for instance, Nigeria, Black Friday is big in Nigeria, in Argentina, and a lot of the South American markets, Carnival is very important. Valentine's Day is very important, as you know, in a lot of countries. The good thing about Valentine's Day is it's the same day no matter where you are in the world. So a lot of their country profiles have got this. It's quite fascinating to see that what you think is normal in your own market for e-commerce is like, it is not normal. There's lots of different things which are normal in other places which are not normal in others.
At the same time, what it is, all of those are classic marketing promotions, right? And what you're doing, the kind of underlying mechanics in terms of promoting, in terms of content, in terms of the mechanics are actually redoable. And if you're good on the marketing side in your home country, chances are you will have some very good success in those geographies as well. So there's also an element of you can use those learnings, you can be ready, you can do the same mechanics, then be very successful for Brazilian Carnival or Indian Diwali. That works as well.
Yeah, okay. Now, just before we wrap up, I wanted like a tip or something from each of you, like some kind of takeaway, some sort of message that people need to kind of remember. Mm-hmm. Floriana, why don't you go first?
Some tip to remember.
No pressure.
I would more or less say some tips to not do it.
Okay.
One, and some of the stuff I learned kind of quite the hard way myself. It is more or less doing too much too fast. Maybe as Matthias said, don't go to Argentina in the first place. Go to a country where you don't need to have a local tax certificate and a local presence, which takes time. Maybe also trying to cluster countries when you think about internationalization and you do take your first countries where you go international. Maybe don't go to Indonesia and Colombia, but maybe Indonesia and Philippines or India and Pakistan. They don't want to hear it, but they're still quite close in terms of how payments work and how the mechanics are. And then maybe also don't underappreciate complexities. It is not that simple. Whatever you can outsource is good. It's not that you start as a merchant in a country and you need to do everything yourself. You don't need to go into full-fledged PCI DSS compliance. There are PSPs who can do that for you. Same as like complexities around settlement or invoicing, or like the financial back offices requirements that also come to play. There are partners who can do that for you. Whatever you can outsource of these complexities is good, because otherwise it will be overwhelming.
And Matthias?
Almost on the same lines, right? I would say go in phases, go step by step. It is number one tip, please go. It's such a wealth of opportunities, and you should seriously consider it. Number two, go in phases. If you're in the Netherlands, absolutely think about maybe Poland. You have Ideal and Pay by Links look very similar. You then train the language there. You go online, you go first. Maybe you're a digital goods merchant. You're used to some sites like Poland, you have a national site. Can you try India? Can you try other markets with Pay by Link type? Yes, you can. So follow some patterns, follow some commonalities, go in phases. And the second tip, as Florian said, somewhere between outsourcing and partners, you're not alone. Find the right partners. For digital, for infrastructure, for payments, maybe even fellow merchants, right, that have solved it. You may be a competitor, but only in some geographies. You may not even be a competitor, right, in those areas. So there's a lot of things you can learn from each other, and find the right partner, find the right friend. You're not alone there. That would be the second.
Okay, so I think we could go on for a lot longer, but we did make a promise at the beginning of this webinar that we'd keep it tight and that we would keep it to 50 minutes. And I think our 50 minutes is about up. So this has been the webinar on Going Global, the e-commerce era, from the team here at Raconteur in London, sponsored by PayU. Obviously, I'd like to thank Floriana Gramlich of OLX Group and Matthias Setzer of PayU. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for watching. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the questions as well. My name is Gren Manuel from Raconteur in London. On behalf of the team here, Floriana and Matthias, we all wish you good luck on your journey towards a successful global e-commerce operation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.